Come cheer up, my lads, 'tis to glory we steer, to find something new in this wonderful year. To honor we call you as free men of slaves, for who are so free as the sons of the waves. Are the folk on our ships, jolly tars are our men. We always are ready, steady boys, steady.
Star Trek: The Next Generation was a TV show that ran between the years 1987 to 1994, and it picks up about 100 years after the events of the original series. Created by Gene Roddenberry, the shows were written to portray the conflicts as allegories to various problems we face today. These range from socio-political issues like the conservation of the environment to racial inequalities, while also involving more futuristic notions such as defining the boundaries of self-awareness and life. But what sets Star Trek apart from other science fiction worlds is the altruistic manner the characters behave when confronted by these challenges. It's the 24th century, and humanity has grown enough to set aside personal differences to strive for something more. For the most part. Now, to an outsider looking in, this may not sound particularly exciting, and I'd have to agree. I wasn't a fan until maybe 10 years ago, and I can recall comparing it to franchises like Star Wars and thinking, why would anyone favor this over this? But the joke was on me, because this scene, when viewed in context, is arguably one of the finest and most poignant moments in TNG. But today, we're not looking at this iconic Captain Picard moment, of which there are many. No, today we're going to take a brief look at an episode that perhaps best encapsulates Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future, while also giving us some of the most quotable lines in the franchise's history. So sit back and set those phasers to stun and energize as we transport ourselves to the fourth planet in the El-Aldrel system. Welcome to Tanagra.
You must tell me more about Darmok and Jalad.
But before we continue, maybe take this moment to think to yourself, hey, this alpaca bro sure makes some good points. Perhaps I should subscribe.
Hey, psst. And while you're at it, why don't you give that old thumbs up a click, and we at Alpaca Thunder Ranch will be eternally grateful.
Thank you.
Good day beneath, Momenta.
This second episode of the 5th season in the Next Generation series is named Darmok, and it's basically about how the United Federation of Planets is looking to establish communication with a mysterious race known as the Children of Tama. The Federation has tried several times in the past century with no success, but the crew of the Enterprise is confident they can succeed where their predecessors failed. And we catch them as they arrive at the planet El-Aldrel 4, where a Temerian ship awaits. But their confidence is quickly shattered when, even with the help of the Universal Translator, the words and phrases coming from the Temerian counterparts seem like nothing more but uncontextualized ramblings.
Rai and Jerry and Lunga.
Counselor.
To make matters worse, the Temerians appear to kidnap Picard, transporting him along with their own captain Dathon to the planet's surface. All initial interpretations by the Federation are seen as hostile, and all attempts at retrieving Picard are countered by the Temerians. Is this a challenge? A sure strength to weed out the weak? Worf sure thinks so, but when is he not? He's a Klingon.
The Geek Tal has begun. Defend yourself.
You leave him right where he is.
Should I incapacitate him, Commander?
No.
Recommend we go to yellow alert, sir.
Why?
I protest. I am not a merry man.
But things in Star Trek aren't ever as they appear. And instead of choosing violence, Picard chooses to listen. And this is the key element that stretches throughout the series. It undertones every choice, every action, every resolution. Now don't get me wrong, I do love it when we get to see the Enterprise kick some Romulan ass. But nothing beats those moments where words prevail. Those moments where discord is not ironed out on the battlefield, but on the diplomacy table. And in this episode, Picard follows through with these ideals. And it's this infectious enthusiasm for problem solving that gets me smiling every time. It warrants self-reflection, not only for yourself, but for humanity as a whole. How beautiful would it be if we could all just solve our problems through cooperation? Now, this is a very idealistic view of the future, and to be fair, Star Trek does explore some of the darker aspects that could be waiting for us in the years to come. But as a whole, TNG is able to convey a message of hopefulness in a genre that is typically dominated by doom and gloom characterizations of our insecurities. And stories like this aren't unique to Star Trek. In fact, you only need to look at 1985's Enemy Mine to see a similar concept.
This is my head. That is you head. You ugly head.
In this Wolfgang Petersen film, you have two enemies stranded on an uninhabited planet, who not only have years of conflict between their factions to overcome, but cultural and language barriers as well. But just like in TNG's Darmok, the enemies must put aside their differences in order to survive. Neither can fully understand the other, but eventually, as they simmer down on their bickering and listen, they begin bridging the gap.
I did not mean it.
Now, this movie hasn't aged particularly well in terms of movie production and effects. However, those that have seen it will often remember it not for its action pieces, but for moments like this.
Luego, nouveau te nouveau zirki.
And why is that? Well, at the end of the day, even in genre fiction, if you don't feel any empathy for the characters, then you are left with only a shell of a world, a vehicle for extravagant set pieces, and nothing else. It's why even today, I think fondly of Enemy Mine, even though it doesn't stack up as a spectacle when compared to other science fiction affairs. And I should add that I do have some strong nostalgic memories of watching this movie with my dad on TV, so there's that emotional tie as well. So maybe take my thoughts on this movie with a pinch of salt.
Darmok and Gilad at Tanagra.
Looking back now at Star Trek The Next Generation, you may also find that the effects look rather, well, like 90s television. And you're right, it can look rather cheesy. The whole notion of creating these higher production TV shows that rivals those of movies was non-existent at the time. At least, not to the extent we have it today. And while there was HBO, in the early 90s they had just started shifting towards this new trajectory. They were still decades away from Game of Thrones levels of production. But even with the sometimes comical effects, just a brief pause here to your regular programming. This is Editing for Felipe, and I just wanted to add that perhaps you should skip season 1. It's a little off. Doesn't represent the rest of the series. So with that said, back to the show. TNG manages to captivate its audience by introducing interesting thought-provoking concepts that their cast of likable characters can interact with. And once you've bought into the world, you'll find yourself fist-pumping the air when the Picard maneuver is executed, just as one may do when the Millennium Falcon escapes the second Death Star. But honestly, Give me a Picard speech any day of the week, and I'm a happy camper. So in conclusion, I just wanted to talk about TNG. I'm gonna be honest. And if you haven't given this gem of a show a shot yet, then what are you waiting for?
And Gilgamesh wept bitter tears, saying, "He who was my companion through adventure and hardship is gone forever."